Hey guys, it's Reagan, and today I am filming an exciting video, at least I think so, and that is going to be my top 14 books of 2014. That's right people, today I'm going to be sharing with you my favorite books of the year. Now just to kind of give you guys an idea of how many books I've read, I read a total of 125 books. It's a lot of books, and so I've narrowed those down to my top 14. And I'm going to be sharing those with you today. Just a bit of a disclaimer, all the books in this video have not necessarily been released in 2014, it's just that I've read them in 2014. And I kind of narrowed all the books down just based on which books have stuck with me the most throughout the year. And I honestly feel like I have a pretty good mix of genre in this video, so hopefully you'll be able to take a little something out of this. So let's go ahead and get started with number 14. So 14 on my list is going to be the Summer Trilogy by Jenny Han. The covers fool you. This series is much more than what meets the eyes. It's much more than the typical fluffy contemporary of just a young female protagonist finding love. This series follows a main female protagonist named Belly, and we follow her in different summers of her life as she deals with the struggles of growing up, finding love, but and purely just honestly finding herself. The series really stood out to me. I took a lot from it, and I actually did a whole series review. You can click that if you're interested in finding out more of my thoughts on this book series, but I honestly found it to be a wonderful YA contemporary series that I just thought was a jewel, and I really enjoyed it, so that's why it's at my 14th spot on the list. Next on the list is another very well-known title, and at number 13 we have Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. This is a thriller adult novel that I honestly can't tell you much about because I feel like the joy of reading the Gone Girl series is finding out what it's about yourself, and I don't want to accidentally spoil anything for you, but just know that this is a great thriller, completely gripping, totally mind-blowing, and it has great dynamic characters that you love to hate. And I ended up reading this book super quickly, totally loved it, and the movie's really great too, so that's why it clocked in at number 13 on my list. Number 13 on the list is going to be another YA contemporary book, which is, I know, kind of shocking for me, but it is going to be Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. This book was just purely, in simple terms, a complete delight. This story follows a young boy as he grows up into manhood in the 1980s in a small town in El Paso, Texas. This story is simple, beautiful, not heavy on metaphor, but it's just stunning. It's about family, it's about acceptance, it's about understanding other people's pain and being able to take on baggage of other people. It is honestly one of the most stunning stories I've ever read, and it's simple and it's beautiful and it's refreshing. So I highly, highly recommend this book to you. Number 11 on my list is going to be another contemporary, but this time it's adult, and it is The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry by Gabrielle Zevin. Again, this story was just a delight to read, and it follows a man who owns a bookstore that's a little down on life. He recently lost his wife, his business isn't doing the greatest, but then one day a surprise package in the form of a child lands on his doorstep, and it completely transforms his life forever. This book is all about the love of reading and how reading brings a community together and helps a man kind of restart his life. It is just a wonderful, wonderful story, and I honestly can't foresee anyone disliking this book. Maybe that's a generalization of a statement, but it's just so lovely. It's such a lovely, lovely, lovely story. So obviously I recommend it because it's in this video. Number 10 on the list is going to be Heir of Fire by Sarah J. Maas. This is the third book to the Heir of Fire series, which is a young adult fantasy series that I highly, highly enjoy. If you're not aware, the first book, Throne of Glass, follows the world's most fearsome assassin, Celaena Saradathian. However, at the beginning of the book, she has been in a prison for about a year, and she strikes up a deal with the king to basically, for her freedom, she has to enter this competition to become the king's champion, or essentially the king's assassin. So that's the premise of the first book. However, I'm talking about the third book here. I thought the third book was a great continuation of the series, just continue to build a great foundation for a wonderful fantasy story. I think the characters in the Throne of Glass series are delightful. Celaena Saradathian is so awesome and funny and great. I personally really appreciate her because I feel like she's super strong and kick-ass, but she's also feminine. It kind of shows that, yes, she's a girl and she kicks butt and can wield a sword, but she also likes dresses, and that's okay too. So I really feel like this is a great fantasy series. If you haven't started it yet, do so. Number 9 on my list is going to be A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. This wouldn't be a list if Patrick Ness wasn't on it. This is a short book with great illustrations. I recommend getting the edition with illustrations. This basically follows a young boy whose mother is dying of cancer, and then one night a monster calls at his window, and it sort of kind of takes off from there. This book might tear you apart, but it is also unbelievably just fantastic. The writing, Patrick Ness's writing is delicious, okay? Like, you read it and you just want to live in it. His prose is just so good. And again, the accompanying illustrations in the book are dark and creepy and fit the vibe of the story. And I feel like the message of the story overall is one that is very powerful and something a lot of people can take something from. And I love this story so much. So, number 8 on my list is going to be Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. To me, this book is just a recipe for success in my book, because it is the nerd that is me's dream come true in a book. This novel is a dystopian-esque novel. The world has kind of gone to crap because the environment has sort of exploded, you know, greenhouse gases. So humanity's response to this is to make this fantastic online reality world, kind of like an MMORPG, but like real. Like, you're living in it and it sounds freaking cool. The creator of this online world that so many people live in dies, and in his will, basically he's like, if you find the Easter egg in the game, you get the game. Like, you become one of the co-owners of this game, which is like huge. So companies, people are all trying to get this Easter egg because it's worth a lot of money. Our main character is also very interested in this quest because he lives a really crappy life. He's very, very poor, and he wants a way out of that. So we follow him as he's on this awesome video game quest, and the book is just full of 80s pop culture, really awesome, just like nerd stuff that makes me so happy every time I think about it. The book is great. It's fast-paced, it's hilarious, it's amazing, okay? And yeah. Number 7 on my list is going to be Night Film by Marisha Pessl. This is a mystery thriller paranormal book. This book follows a reporter that has like fallen from grace, I guess you could say. Like, he was really, really acclaimed, and then basically he released a story that people felt like wasn't factual, so he kind of fell from the grace of the public eye. But basically, at the beginning of this story, a very well-known cult director of horror movies' daughter dies, and it seems like she's committed suicide. But this reporter doesn't believe so. So he goes on an investigation to figure out the true story. And let me tell you, my friends, this book messes with your brain like none other. Marisha Pessl made one of the most immersive reading experiences I have ever had. I literally felt like I was living it, and at times I was terrified and I did not want to be living in it. The book completely messes with your sense of reality and perception and what is real and what is fake, and it's so great. Also, to even make the book feel more immersive, uses photographs and actual pictures of the websites that the reporter visits as he's in his investigation, so you feel like you're reading the notes as he finds them too. It's really awesome. There's also an app that the author made for this book, so it's just so freaking cool and so good, and it will mess with your mind, let me tell you. Number 6 on my list is going to be The Shock of the Fall by Nathan Filer, or Where the Moon Doesn't Shine, which it's the English title of the same book. But yes, this is a fantastic book, okay? It is basically, the best way to describe it, to me, a memoir of a young man, 19, 20, 21, writing about his life as he's dealing with severe mental illness. He writes about his life, his brother, his family, and basically the struggles that he's had his whole life due to his extreme mental disability, mental illness that he has. It's very, very raw and gripping, and I felt very invested in the story, and I thought the story dealt with mental illness in a very realistic way, which I greatly appreciated, and I don't feel like it was glamorized or romanticized. I felt like it was very real, and the author spotlighted this young man, and we got to learn a lot about his life and his struggles from his perspective. And I actually did a full review on this book, so I will link that down below as well if you're interested to check it out. Now we're getting into the top 5 section of this video, and starting off at number 5 is going to be The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Leslie Walton. I feel like I've talked about this book a lot recently on my channel because obviously I absolutely loved it. This story is narrated by our main character, Ava Lavender, and she is a very peculiar girl because she was born with wings. So she's telling us her life story by first starting with the life story of her grandmother, then moving on to her mother, and then the story of herself. This book deals with magical realism and is honestly just a wonderful story. I honestly didn't realize how much I was loving it until I got to the end and I was crying, and I realized that the story literally felt like it burrowed inside of me and it's there forever. I just thought it was a wonderful treat. I thought the story was much more serious and much more heavy-hitting, and it just had so much more than I was expecting, and it really took me by surprise, and I found it to be an absolute delight, and I cannot wait for Leslie Walton to write and publish more books because I will pick them all up because this story was absolutely fantastic. Number 4 on the list is a book, you may have heard me talk about 1 or 2 times on my channel, and that is going to be Vicious by V.E. Schwab. This book, this was one of the first books I read in 2014, and it was so amazing. Vicious follows the story of 2 young men who in college were the best of friends, completely geniuses, and also very diabolical because they wanted to figure out how to sort of cheat life and get superpowers. So we have that storyline in the very beginning of the story, but it also jumps into the future and other chapters, and where we find out that these 2 men achieved getting superpowers, but now they're arch nemesis and they're trying to kill each other. This story is wonderful for multiple different reasons. One of which I think the strongest reason is the characters, because they're so diabolical but in some way likable that it's just so intriguing to read about. Their perspectives and Victoria's writing just make them like so rich, and you hate that you love them, but you love them. You just do. Victor, the main character that we read from, is one of my favorite characters of all time. I want to be his friend, but I'm also terrified of him. This story is just great. Third on my list is going to be the Finnikin of the Rock series, consisting of Finnikin of the Rock, Froy of the Exile, and Quintana of Sharon. This is a young adult trilogy written by Melina Marchetta, which is just a total and complete delight. Probably my favorite young adult fantasy series I have ever read. Yes, I realize that is a big statement, but these books deserve that title. This is a series hard to explain because it is mostly character driven, and each book focuses on a new character within the world, but everything is connected. I will say the first book, Finnikin of the Rock, follows our main protagonist, Finnikin. Basically, in the beginning of the novel, it's laid out that his kingdom was destroyed about 10 years ago, and all of his people that survived this vicious takeover are now refugees in other kingdoms living as vagrants. It's very unfortunate, and he has a mission that he wants to bring his people home and find the missing prince of his empire and build his kingdom back together. That's the setup of the first one, but I will say the story is so much bigger than that, and the characters are absolutely rich and just so great. Melina Marchetta has a almost like fairy tale-esque type writing. She can write a tale like nobody's business, let me tell you. I found the series to be just entirely refreshing and new, something I definitely have never really read in the young adult genre before. It almost felt to me like a mix between adult and young adult fantasy. Like it had really rational characters dealing with very adult themes, but they were young, like in a young adult series. So I don't know. It was great though. Please just read it. 2 on my list is another book I have talked incessantly about, and that is going to be All the Light We Cannot See, people. Yes. This is a historical fiction novel following two perspectives, a young, blind French girl and a young Nazi youth. This is set during World War II, and we follow these two perspectives from childhood and until they meet during the war and then after. It is so good, okay? I've always had a hard time articulating about this book, but this novel deals with, one, the setting, I think, in a unique and refreshing way. World War II historical fiction books are done often, but Anthony Doerr is a genius, and the story is just so lovely. His writing, his metaphor, I can't even handle most of the time. Like, I would read things, have to close the book, and just yell out in my room, which I realize is weird, but then you read the book and you understand. Itself has a very interesting format that I really enjoy. It's written in very short chapters and you switch perspectives after each chapter. So it's almost like you're reading just these tiny little vignettes about these two people's lives, and they just, all these little scenes build up on each other until you get this grand picture, this painting that Anthony Doerr has made and crafted for you at the end of this book. It is spectacular, people, okay? And number one, the best book that I read in 2014 is the rest of the Mistborn trilogy, which is going to be The Well of Ascension and The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. The master of fantasy and plot, I've decided. These two books are the last two books in the Mistborn trilogy, and if you recall, if you've been with me for a while, the first book was number 2 on my list last year, and I finished it this year, and holy crap, people, it is insane. This fantasy series is just a whole nother tier, okay? I'll give you the premise of the first book because obviously that makes the most sense. The Final Empire is the first book by Brandon Sanderson, and it's set in the world with the premise that the bad guy won. The Dark Lord reigns over this land and it's desolate, there's mist, crops fail, there's dust everywhere. Basically, you are either the elite or you're a serf, slave type person. Within this world, there is a magic system called allomancy, which is basically people consume metals, and with those metals, they can do different things. There's allomancers that can just use one type of metal, but then there's other individuals called Mistborn that could use all types of metal. And within the first book of the story, it follows a small group of individuals who are looking to overthrow the Dark Lord. Kind of think of the first book, The Final Empire, as a weird mix of Ocean's 13 and just badassery of magic. But I just want to say, because the second two books are the ones that made my list here, the books are more than I can even try to express to you, because like I said, Brandon Sanderson is the master of plot, okay? You think you know what is going to happen. You feel like you understand the direction that Brandon Sanderson is taking you in this world, but I will guarantee you are wrong and you will have your mind blown. If I'm not, your money back guaranteed. Alrighty guys, those are my top 14 books of 2014, people. Let me know down below some of your favorite books, and I will see you guys soon with another video soon. Goodbye!